Hi, my name is Jim Hine. I'm one of the pastors at Vineyard Church, and along with my wife, Pastor Sarah Hine, we had the privilege of doing a relaunch here at Vineyard Church in Hutchinson, Minnesota. I'm here to give you some advice, some tips and tricks, talk about some of the things that we did as part of our process, the results that we saw, and also some advice, things that I wish I would have known on day one, and some of the most important things that I can tell you. I'm also going to be showing various videos and pictures, give you a sense of what the church looks like, some of the projects that we took, including the remodel, to give you an idea of what to expect and what results you can hope to see in your own restart process. The decision to restart came before my wife and I came on board. And in fact, before we started, it was meant to be a merger. But because the other church voted no for the merger, this church was kind of out of options, so to speak. For us, because this felt like our only option, and because it was done so quickly on such a short timeline, most of the congregation didn't really have a vision for what it even meant to restart. And even though they voted and agreed to it, there wasn't that buy-in. They didn't know what they were doing. They didn't know what it all entailed. So my advice to you, what you want to do is really spend time in the beginning stages creating that vision, helping people understand what is going to be happening and getting that buy-in. Because once you do that, it'll solve so many other problems later down the road. And so we spent a lot of time talking about vision, talking about the future of the church, explaining where things were going and why we were doing what we were doing. Now, the honest truth is in these groups, we were hoping to get a lot of excitement, build this collaborative process where people talked about their vision and future for the church. But honestly, that didn't happen for the most part. And in fact, what did happen so much is it was a lot of pastoral care. A lot of people talked about their frustrations. A lot of people said they couldn't even, they didn't know why they were going to church anymore, or going to this church anymore. People were sad, they were frustrated. And as far as vision goes, vision for the future, the thing that I heard more than anything else was, well, I just hope that we're still open in 2 years. And so for me as a leader, I was the one who needed to lead boldly with vision because it simply wasn't here. And my encouragement to you is, likely if you're doing a restart, there's a bad narrative at your church. There's probably a lack of hope, a lack of vision too. You need to be a bold leader who brings that and is essentially the initial cheerleader for everything and who is willing to create a new and good and positive story for your church. You can spend some time dealing with the grief and the sadness, but don't dwell there too terribly long. Start creating that new story as early as you possibly can. But one of the good things that came out of these relaunch groups was that I could at least identify a few key leaders to begin helping me with some of the projects. Now I'm going to talk about some of the projects that we were doing during the soft close, because there were two main components happening. There were the internal things, the things that I needed that core group of leaders that I had identified to help me with, and then there's the external outreach component that we focused very heavily on. I'm going to start with the internal component. So internally, with those leaders that I identified, what we did was we identified a few absolutely key projects that we needed to do. And some of those projects, the ones that were the most important, were for retention. The things that you're doing internally are so that when you have new people come in, when you invite them in and they do come, it's a different atmosphere. It's a new church that encourages them to stay. It's one thing to get people in the door. It's another thing entirely to get them to stay. And so all the work you're doing internally is for that retention rate and to increase it. And so some of the things that we worked on in particular was the remodel. We'll show various pictures and videos of the remodel, and you've seen some already, but you get a sense of the things that we were doing, the choices that we were making were to have the greatest impact in the highest traffic areas as we possibly could with the funds that we had. The very first thing that we did was remove the pews and replace it with chairs. I'll say that was the hardest one because it was the first change that we made. People didn't like change. They couldn't envision the change that we were trying to make. And the main point that I want to make is after we finally got them in, after the pews were gone and replaced with chairs, one of the things that I heard more often than not was, "Oh yeah, you're right. This is a change for the better." So there was more buy-in the next time around, less complaining, and people were more willing to allow us to make the next change that we needed to do. But the other things that we did is we really worked on hospitality. We had teams in training trying to show them what hospitality looks like and how to make people feel welcome and enjoy being here. So we worked on contact cards, following up, sending cards and messages, taking people out to coffee, lunch, things of that sort, because at the end of the day, people are looking for relationships. And if you're not focused on that, it's going to hurt your retention rate. Another important change that we made had to do with the worship style itself. Before it was very liturgical with organ music, and we overhauled it entirely to a more modern structure and a praise band. And this was really important, and it's one of the most important things I learned, because in this area, initially, we hadn't done enough. And even in the summer months, we had a lot of new people coming, but our retention rate was terrible, probably around 25%. And I took out to lunch all the people who had came and visited, but hadn't returned. And one of the things that they said was that they really didn't like the music. And that's because worship is really important. The music is really important. And so it was a wake-up call to me as our relaunch was approaching that we really needed to get this right. And we need to make a more drastic change. And so the encouragement that I would have for you is, again, there may be pushback. There's a temptation to keep the people who are currently here happy because they're the ones who are here. But I just want to say that you need to be thinking down the road, big picture, for the people who aren't here yet. The more you compromise, the less impact that your relaunch will have. You really, truly need to think of your church as a brand new church. Now, externally, the other thing that you need to do is be focused on outreach. You can do all these remodel projects. You could have a fantastic hospitality team, a great worship band, all these sorts of things. But the truth is, if you aren't inviting people, if you aren't reaching out to them, all of this will be for naught. No new people will come through your doors. Now, Ben, our coach, he needed us to make 1,000 contacts in the course of a little over a year. That's around 5 people each and every day. So for me and my wife personally, we are big into running. And so one of the ways we met lots and lots of people was from the local running group. I also volunteer as a high school coach for the cross-country team. It's what it's what I'm truly passionate about. It's what means a lot to me. And so it comes across as authentic and real because it is authentic and real. Find the things that are great for you, and don't get trapped with maintenance ministry in the church. Don't do things that are hokey. Find the things that work for you but are consistently and effectively meeting people. Another very important thing we did was we completely overhauled some of the events that we had been doing. A lot of the things that had been done in the church were the same events that had been done for decades and hadn't brought in a new person in about as long. And as we moved on, some of the events that we did, we'll show some of the pictures, but they were very outward focused, very relational focused, not just for us and the people who were here, but for the people out in the community. And one of the events that we did was a children's cancer research event called St. Baldrick's. And in that event, not only did we have a lot of people from the community here, but we also raised $10,000 for children's cancer research. We did other such events. I won't have time to talk about them all. But again, the whole focus is outward and relational, and that's what you need to focus on. The other thing that we did during our soft close is every other event, every other project, Bible study, things of that sort, we put them on hold indefinitely. And the only thing that we were doing in the church was Sunday morning worship. Everything else was on hold. And the reason that we did this was because we needed to make it crystal clear that we were putting all of our eggs in this basket. This was the only thing that we were doing, and this was our only way forward. Nothing else mattered as much as this particular project. Now, before I get into the results and the things of that sort, the things that you might be able to expect based on what happened for us, I just want to give a plug for the coaches, because they were incredibly helpful for us. So thank you to the coaches, and my advice to you is to remember that, again, listen to your coaches. They're going to push you, sometimes extremely hard. They're going to give you concrete deadlines and goals, and sometimes you don't know if you're going to be able to accomplish them because they are very aggressive. But that's the point. They are trying to keep you accountable. They are trying to make sure that you are doing the things that absolutely need to happen if you are going to accomplish your goals, if this relaunch is going to be successful, because it's not easy. So again, the results that we saw before we came, before any of the restart or the soft close, was that an average worship here at Vineyard was somewhere in the upper 30s, maybe low 40s. After we came, I think because there was a lot of buzz and people wanted to know what this relaunch was and some of the initial changes that happened right away in the soft close, our average worship attendance was about in the mid-50s. What we had for our relaunch day itself was 120 people who came for the service, which was more than any of the Easters or Christmases that we had had before that. Of those 120 people, 35 of them were absolutely brand new and had no connection to the church. Our average attendance since the relaunch has been right around 85, 86-ish. And since then, we also continued to get new people. We average 1 or 2 new people a week. There are a few weeks where we haven't had any, especially after the Christmas season. But by and large, consistently, it's been around 1 or 2 new people each week. One thing you'll notice is that those aren't staggering numbers. We aren't all of a sudden overnight a mega church. We didn't increase, sevenfold or anything of that sort. But what I would say is it has given this church, Vineyard, a very significant bump. There is new momentum. There is new life. There is new energy. People can see that good things are happening. And the best part is when I talk to people who've been coming here for a while, they already tell me that they feel like the relaunch is a success. They already say that. The narrative around this church in a little over a year has changed dramatically. And so we still have more goals. We still have more projects. We aren't done yet. We feel like the snowball effect is starting to happen. The first few rotations are small. There's not a lot that you can necessarily see numeric-wise, but we are moving. And each rotation, that momentum, helps us keep going so that we can continue to grow and develop. And again, that entire narrative that something is happening, good things are happening, makes those next invites even more authentic and genuine. And they come from not just the pastor, but from people in the congregation inviting their friends saying, this is something actually worth coming to. And those invitations are the most valuable ones that we can have. And so again, my final thoughts are, take a deep breath. Know that people have done this before. It can be done. It is hard. You'll need to dive in deep. You'll need to really commit yourself. But the truth is, know that you're responsible for being faithful at the end of the day. And then after that, it's up to God. We put our trust in Him, and He's the one who makes this happen. We just need to be faithful and put everything that we have into making this happen. And so if this is something that you are genuinely passionate about, if you want to see the church live and thrive in the midst of so much decline and despair, you need to be the one to say, I'm going to make this happen, even if it's just me by myself. But I want you and everyone else in this church to join me, because together we can be so much more effective for God's glory. That's the vision that you need to have. That's the energy that you need to have. And that's contagious. People will follow. People want that kind of leadership. If you just sit and wait for other people to get to find it themselves, you'll probably be waiting forever. Be the kind of leader. Ask for help. Look to your coaches. Look to colleagues. And may God bless you in the process. Amen.